let's talk about household items in the 1840s. Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. I'm a living historian who educates other living historians by teaching old-fashioned sewing skills and copying original garments. We have been working through a year-long series of really deep diving into the 1840s as I really start getting into 1840s living history. So we have talked about where to find fabrics, how to find patterns, where to get good resources, how to make dresses. We did 2 months of that. We did a couple months of making an outfit. We talked about dressing from the inside out, going really deep into all of the layers and what they would have looked like in the 1840s. And then we also talked about how to feed and entertain people. And so now we're going to talk about just the basic living things, like the actual items that we might decide to bring to a living history event or we might use during a living history event. Things like cooking, eating utensils, bedding, things that I find useful to bring to an event or to at least have during an event. And I am not a furniture expert. This is going to be interesting. I'm not the best at furniture. I've never really had to study furniture too much simply because at most living history events, the furniture is already there for me. I do a lot of things in buildings and in houses, like the historic sites, and so generally those places are already furnished. At most, I might need to bring something to sit on. We'll talk a little bit about furniture. In fact, we're going to start with that and kind of get that out of the way, but I will list a few resources down below if you really want to dive in a little deeper. When we look at things to bring to an event, we have to ask first, what is the event purpose? What's the scenario? Who am I within that scenario? And what are some common things that someone at that place and time would have access to? And as always, this needs to be documented with primary sources. It's not just well, we're out in the middle of Wyoming and, it is 1840, so you know what, this 18th century stuff will be fine. That's using our modern 21st century glasses to look into the past. What we need to do is go to primary sources and figure out what exactly was there as close as possible. Not just assuming because we have been doing this for a long time or think we know better. Also think about the others who will be around you and maybe you can double up on a few things. So if somebody has a set of cookware and y'all decide to cook together, maybe both of you don't need to bring cookware. And that's just one less thing that someone else in that group needs to pack. I do have a packing for an event video that I can link that may be helpful. So that will be linked in the description below. And again, this is things that I have found useful that I will generally use. Your needs may differ depending on the event, where you are, what you have access to, all of that. It'll very much depend on the event. There are events where all your meals are provided and they may ask you to bring, period cutlery and dishes, or they may provide those for you, in which case you don't have to bring as much. I would say the really only essential part of eating and drinking, at least, would be bringing something to hold water in, like a glass or a cup or a canteen or something of that nature, depending on your impression. Some sites provide beds or bedding or just the bed frame, and you provide the bedding, and others will provide candles or lanterns or candlesticks, and others won't. It really just depends, but we're going to go through a lot of that today. So ask if you're not sure. Or you can be like me and just bring everything anyway and just keep it in the car all weekend. Just in case. We're going to start by looking at some chairs. So there's lots of varieties of chairs and what would be appropriate. So there's a book called The Cottage, Farm, and Villa Architecture. And it's not just architecture, it has a lot of furniture. It was first published in 1836. It was basically republished a couple of times, I think until the 1850s, with very few changes. But it has just pages and pages of just furniture items. So if you wanted to know what a child's nursery potty chair would look like, they have an illustration of that. But then they also just have regular chairs and they have descriptions of them. So they have, one maybe a dining chair, one maybe a parlor chair. They would all have descriptions, but this is a good overview. And if you keep like screenshots on your computer, that way when you go antiquing or go to thrift stores, you can match certain types of chairs. You can perhaps match the chairs so that you can purchase one that's appropriate. And here's some more sets of chairs. So like this one specifically says it's a kitchen chair, and it has, the type, which is a Windsor, and then there's also like ladder back chairs. But when you're looking at furniture, it's not just enough to go, oh, Windsor chair is appropriate because I see the word Windsor. I'm going to go pick a Windsor chair and I'm going to bring that. There's so much involved in furniture making as to the types of joints that are being used, the exact style of leg, the woods that are being used, if there's any screws or nails, all that differs by time period and does make a difference on whether an item is appropriate for living history use at a particular site and time. So that's just, again, saying it's not just enough to go, oh, this is a ladder back chair, this is a ladder back chair, so obviously I can bring this to an event. That chair may not be at all the right time period. Styles ebb and flow, but they all are slightly different. You may see, for instance, houses in architecture. We call the Greek Revival architecture that was popular in this time period, the 1840s. But you also see a revival of the Greek Revival in like 1900. But there are differences, right? So you see, they look somewhat similar, but when you get closer into it, you're like, okay, usually in the 1840s you don't have screened-in porches, or there isn't a little cupola at the top generally. You see different style choices, even though it is a revival, even though it's the same basic type of architecture, you will see differences because the time periods are different. Just because someone is taking inspiration from the past doesn't mean that they are exactly copying the past. They're using elements from the past that they find good and they're adding in the modern elements. And the same thing works with furniture. Some more styles of chairs, more of them. There's a little potty chair, chamber pot right there. Different, again, types of chairs. You can see the different varieties of legs. Here's some more that are a little bit fancier, and even more. All right, let's look at some chairs in paintings. Genre paintings are really good for looking at chairs. This is an 1830s one. Before a poor situation, you may find ladder back chairs like this to be appropriate for your time in the 1840s. There are areas in the 1860s where similar ladder back chairs are seen. So it's one of those things where as long as you're documenting to your time and place, it can be appropriate. And there's also a stool over here that could be used for sitting. You don't have to sit on a chair. It can be a stool. I just purchased a chair last year. I never had a chair before. I either sat on, if someone would bring an extra chair, or I would sit on the ground. I don't mind sitting on the ground. Sometimes I'll bring a blanket to sit on the ground, but otherwise I would just sit on the ground. I've sat on trunks. I've sat on mattresses. Like, to me, it doesn't matter. Some people are a little bit more picky, I would say, but stools work, chairs work, blankets work, trunks work. There's lots of ways that you can sit down and rest. But yeah, I just recently bought a chair. In fact, my friend Lanya still has it. She bought it last year. And I've seen her like once or twice because we live across the country from each other. And she's been keeping this chair for me. I'm so grateful because we have not been able to, last time we saw each other, we happened to fly there. So we weren't able to take the chair back on the airplane. So we're just waiting until we actually drive up there so I can take the chair back. Actually, I think I bought 2 of them off her. So I'm really excited. Rhett thinks I'm a little bit crazy because he doesn't think that I need a chair. He thinks that it's, fine that I continue to do things that I've always done, which is like sitting on the ground and sitting on blankets and on trunks. And I'm like, I want a chair. I feel like I have gotten to the point in my life where having a chair sounds really nice. So I did buy the 2 chairs. All right, so more chairs. This is more of a parlor scene. Again, it's 1830s. We see different types of chairs, including, I guess I would call that a stool, sort of. But there's like more of an armchair situation. You can also see how big they are, because some chair styles will be the same style, but they may get bigger or smaller depending on the time period. So it's nice to see people actually sitting in things. This is another one. Here's a good wooden chair back there. This is an 1840s one. We kind of see the chair in the corner. It's very hard to see because she has clothes all over it, but we can see sort of the outline of the back and then the legs as well. We see some chairs in the background, one with a shawl or blanket on it. You can see the styles of chair. The next thing we're going to look at is tables and tablecloths. Going back to the cottage, farm, and villa architecture. So here are some tables. I specifically picked some in here that are folding tables, because I know for events people like things that fold, so it's nice to see some period appropriate options for folding tables. So that one looks like it would be a really good one for events, actually. If you have a carpenter in your life, you might be able to make that work. Here's a couple others. It's another type of folding table at the top that almost works like what we would consider to be a TV dinner table. It would be different size, but it would be a very similar function. It's basically the same design. So if you've seen or made something similar to that, this would be something easy to adapt to. All right, tables. These are mostly going to be covered by tablecloths, so we can actually look at some tablecloths. This one is a very late 1830s to early 1840s. We have actually a couple chairs in the background we can look at too. But then the table, it looks like it's round. You can kind of see how short it is. So this is a good way to gauge, okay, about how tall does my table need to be, about how wide can it be to fit within period parameters. So, and it's covered by a square tablecloth. We can tell that because of the corners that we see. And it doesn't go all the way to the ground, but it does go pretty close to the ground. And it goes about mid-thigh to both of the people. All right, this one we have a couple, again, some more chairs we can look at. A stool right here. And then table in the background, rectangular. Has a rectangular cloth on it that is green. Maybe some fringe or some sort of work along the edges. All right, this one, I like this one. So you can see a few chairs. And you don't see a lot of detail at the table. You can see it's a very blocky type of table. It's not particularly well made. It could even be homemade for all we know. Looks like a rectangular table, but you see the creases in the tablecloth. And this is actually not unusual. You see a lot of tablecloths with the creases still in them. We would iron them out. In the 19th century, they didn't tend to do that. They actually liked the creases because it looked clean and fresh that way. We just looked at the chairs on this one. But here's another tablecloth, rectangular tablecloth. You see how far down the tablecloth goes. But again, you see the crease lines from when the tablecloth was stored and got the crease lines. This is 1838, I believe, the Sleepy Knitter. So we have a nice little side table, about another round one, maybe 2-ish feet across, embroidered or woven design on that tablecloth. And it is another another square tablecloth. So far we haven't seen any round tablecloths on our round tables. We have seen square ones, which is an interesting note. So it may at this particular time, maybe it's more appropriate, instead of having a round tablecloth, maybe that's not exactly what they were doing. Maybe they were doing square. So we would need to, before bringing out a round tablecloth for our round table, we would need to document that. And that's one of the things we look at paintings and that sort of thing, so we can actually tell what was really being done. All right, we've looked at this painting before, but here we have another tablecloth. It looks like a round or an ovular table, but again, it looks like a rectangular tablecloth. We see a corner over here. This one's a dressing table, so dressing tables often were covered as well. That wasn't unusual. Workman's Guide has directions for covers for work tables or for dressing tables. This one's 1840s. We just kind of see the very corner of a table. Plain legs is what we can see. Can't even tell. This one does look to be a square or rectangular table just because I see a point up here. And then we have a very nicely, maybe brocaded or something, woven designed in that tablecloth. That may be it for, okay, one more table. This is late 1830s as well. Rectangular tablecloth. This one actually, the tablecloth is big enough to where it is dragging on the floor in the corners. Looks like there might be some fringe or something at the bottom of that as well. And this one is a picnic. You can see there are creases in the tablecloth. It's a little bit more frumpy, but it's a white tablecloth, a little blue edging along it. We'll be coming back to this painting later because dishes and bottles and all sorts of fun stuff. Creases in your tablecloth, particularly if they're white. I would suggest having creases in your tablecloth. All right, this is another 1840s. We'll come back for the bed later. Round table, square tablecloth, has this little edge to it. So far it's looking like even if we have round tables, we're going to put a square tablecloth on it. Another one, this one you actually see is a brocaded, like a woven design, almost like a checkerboard design in it. I love how some painters give that detail. But you see the creases once again. And this one was made for a much longer table. So it's not necessarily that we are matching the tablecloth to a particular table. It's almost like you have a tablecloth, you made a tablecloth, or you bought a tablecloth when you were married, or left over from your mother, or you just bought one because you liked it. It doesn't have to match the exact table. This one was clearly meant for a either narrower table and then a longer table, because you see how one side comes down so much further. And that doesn't seem to be as big of a deal in the mid-19th century as we would consider it to be today. Having I've never noticed that. Okay, that's not what I'm looking at. See, this is how I get stuck looking at. I start looking at one thing, I start researching one thing, I end up somewhere totally different. Stay focused. Okay. This is another one you actually get to see. This is not an American image, by the way, but you can see a little bit of a folding table and a nice little chair back there. You can see the table that folds down a little bit. It was round. You can make it into a very narrow rectangular table. All right, let's look at tents and flies, because some of us do camp for our events. I don't do that for 1840s, at least I never have camped for 1830s and 1840s, but I know people who do. So let's look at some tents. A lot of tents today are going to be marketed toward the Civil War crowd, and I assume it's going to be more like a little grommet, like using metal grommets instead of hand-done grommets, little eyelets situation is what I'm going to assume. But I did find some period images of military tents for you. It's going to, period tents, again, can differ a lot between their sizes, like the exact dimensions of them, the shapes, the materials used. This will give you a good idea. Like, looks like we have some wall tents that are taller and narrower than we usually see wall tents being made. And then a couple of A-frames. Well, I say a lot of A-frames. Like, this is another one. This is a French painting. And we can see somewhat of a wall-ish tent, I suppose. Don't get a lot of detail on it. This is another one, more like wall-type tents, but less rectangular and more square. And then we have some A-frames, larger A-frames in the background as well. This was on the Hutt River, circa 1840. And then we have some tents in the background of this one. They're mostly A-frames. We can see how they're closed. That doesn't give us a lot of detail into like how they close or the finer points of them, but you can probably research that. Let's talk beds. So again, for beds, I picked some that were appropriate, that also kind of dismantled themselves a little bit so that you can easily pack them, or at least easier ones to pack. So there would be like a nice little folding camp bed. It would be a nice little design. Looks like that'd be pretty easy to put together. This is another one. It's kind of almost like a Murphy bed almost. I don't know how well this would travel, but I think it kind of shows you. This is another version of it where it would just fold up in there, and it kind of creates a bench, so you could have like a couch or a bench during the day and have a bed at night, which is kind of a clever design. It may not be the easiest thing to move, and that thing is probably extremely heavy. Depending on what you want, that may work for you. This is a nice Germanic image, so I would ignore her clothes because it is, unless you're from Germany, then you can absolutely do with clothes. So we have a bed back here. It's wooden. Most of them are going to be wood. Nice little size. We'll come back for the bedding in a little bit. There's another bed in the corner of this one. We saw the table. Here's the bed, wooden posts. It does have a canopy over top, but it's not attached to the bed. It's more like it's attached almost to the ceiling and it comes down. But we can't quite see the ceiling, so we can't quite tell exactly how that goes up. But it's clearly not attached to the bed because we can see the spindles of the bed and they're quite low. Canopies would be nice in the winter because they will keep in heat. Also, something similar to that made of like a cotton net. Or a tobacco cloth, which would be a lot cheaper, could make they're not mosquito net, they would call them mosquito bars. And so that could be great in the summer, particularly if you're at an event with a lot of mosquitoes. It'll keep you from getting bug bites. We went to Louisiana, Port Hudson, a year and a half ago now, and the mosquito bar saved our life. We really appreciate Michelle putting that together because yeah, otherwise that would not have been a fun event. Bedding. So let's look at the bedding now. A couple mattresses, which is pretty normal to have two mattresses. Usually you'd have one that's a little bit more firm. That one would be either straw or it could be chaff, hay, Spanish moss, and you'd have a sea moss that's been dried out, grasses, something that's just a little bit more firm. That's usually going to be your bottom mattress. Cotton, wool would also fit into that bottom mattress category. And your top mattress is usually going to be a feather bed, so they would call them beds. And they usually didn't use the word mattress. You would use the word bed. So you'd have like a wool bed and a feather bed, which is just a term difference than what we would use. So I would avoid using the word mattress so much and just use the word bed even for the bedding itself. So you can see she has a lower bed, which again is going to be a little bit more firmer. And then you see how this one's folded in half. So that was likely her feather bed. You see how thick it is. We can see this one's like an orange or a brown ticking. We have some blue, orange brown stripes over here. We have some blue stripes here. Pillow looks like it might be stuffed with hair or wool or something, and it ties shut. So a good place to look for bedding and dimensions and stuff would be the Workwoman's Guide. So we can search things like pillowcases. Let's see if it'll pull it up. Yeah, so pillowcases, and it tells you sheets. And it'll tell you, like, for the best sheets, which would be for guests, made of fine linen, family sheets, coarser linen, servant sheets could be unbleached linen, calico sheets, crib sheets, all of that. Pillowcases, it'll show you the same thing: finest linen, fine linen, soft calico, fine calico, soft linen. Tells you how many yards and nails to cut at length and width wise, and there are directions for sewing them. And so the Workwoman's Guide will have directions for sheets and pillowcases and that sort of thing, so you can get good dimensions. It'll tell you how to do it. It's a good 1838 source, and we see something basically like what the Workwoman's Guide shows with this pillow here. Another 1840s bed. So nice large pillows. It's not unusual to see some large pillows. Usually stuffed with feather. They can be stuffed with wool. They can be stuffed with a lot of things. We see like a blanket. I'm not sure that's a blanket or her bed right there. Ooh, there's a garter on the ground with a buckle. Okay, that's another thing I can't go down right now. It's a nice little lower bed actually. And you kind of see her mattress continues to go up, and it acts as a little bit of a pillow, so she almost sleeps a little bit sitting up. Another bed, lots of little fluffy things. Their beds tend to be like a lot more fluffy, but also they sink down when you get into them. So like the feather beds, particularly, they're nice and thick. They're really nice to like to sit into. You kind of sink into them. It's so soft and so nice, but then it gets kind of harder as you sleep into it. So generally, and you'll see this in a lot of paintings as well, during the day they'll roll those up or like fold them over the bed so they get a little bit fluffed up. You're like moving them each and every day, and you fold them back down with the sheets to go to sleep at night. That would not be unusual. And it looks like these pillowcases are laced shut on hers instead of being with ties. So we're going to briefly talk like pitchers and wash basins, soap, towels. Those things are usually nice to have. Workman's Guide right here has directions for towels. Diaper cloth is going to be good. That would generally be linen diaper cloth in this time period, not cotton. You can get the cotton really cheap at Walmart. Usually has it. A lot of fabric places will sell bird's eye diaper. Basically the same thing, but they would do it in linen. William Booth Draper does sell linen diaper. That's the only good thick one for towels that I've seen. I think Burley & Trowbridge has one right now. Let's look. But it's not, it's more like a dimity. It's a thinner. So I'm not sure how well it would work for things like towels. I mean, that might work. It is fairly thin though. It is lightweight. Maybe get a swatch and it might work for a towel. A huckaback is really what you want, and that can be hard to find. And you really do want it in linen, not in cotton. But that's even harder to find. Huck towels. Sometimes that's the same thing and sometimes it's different. So 27 inches, I was right. So yeah, something in that width range that you don't have to hem the sides. You just use the selvages. You only have to hem the top and the bottom. And it's a little bit narrower. It's only 20 inches. It's not terrible though. It says hem on either side, but does it say whether it's machine or hand sewn? If it's machine sewn, it's pretty easy to take out and redo, because obviously machine sewing wouldn't be appropriate. Yeah, it looks like it's a machine sewn. It's going to be easy to take out and just whip as you go along. That's not too bad. This is huck toweling, 17 inches wide, which would still work. Or width is 1 yard. So yeah, I mean, 1 yard would make a towel. It would be narrower than most actual mid-19th century towels, but it would work. Diaper would be the best because you can get it in that 60-inch wide, and you can just have, two would make a good size. 1 yard would make 2 towels essentially, but you'd have to hem all 4 sides. It's pretty normal to find it. Like here's the stuff at Walmart. This is a 2-yard cut. It also says like table covers. So if you go back to, we're talking about table covers, it'll tell you diaper quilting. It doesn't give you a length or width because you're making it basically to the table at that point. Dinner napkins, it'll tell you how to make those up here. So this is page 178 and 179, and this is just an online copy of the Workwoman's Guide. I will link it below for you. You have like breakfast cloth, common tablecloth, and this will give you basic dimensions. Just pick the one that's closest to your table. It gives you dinner napkins, breakfast napkins, size of all sorts of things. But if you ever want to know what like a chamber bottle cloth or a paint cloth or what a house duster, it tells you what to make it of, how much it would take. Things like cooking cloths, tablecloths, all of that is there. So that's it for towels. For soap, I did say we're talking about pitchers and wash basins, didn't I? That's how we got here. For soap, you don't have to make your own. You can buy lye soap. Even places like Amazon will sell it, so let's look for that. I wouldn't use any with fragrances or any flowers or anything in it. I would use basic, pure lye soap. That's a good basic bar of soap. I wouldn't use the label on it. Obviously, I would take the label off. But that's a good basic bottle of soap. This one is a tallow soap. Any basic fat, either lard or tallow soap made with lye. If you want to make it yourself, go for it. But I would do something like that for, this is another brand right here. Again, a good basic lye soap. Here's another old-fashioned lye soap. And then to hold the soap, because soap gets kind of messy, what I would do is use a little bit of an oilcloth. In a pinch, you could probably get some black cloth and do the whole beeswax over it. Wouldn't be the most appropriate, but it would at least function as oilcloth until you got your hands on some oilcloth. And that way you can wrap the soap in oilcloth and it won't get everything else messy. That's what I would suggest there. Again, we'll talk more about casings and all that. I'm gonna look up 1830s pitcher wash basin. There's a reproduction, and that's the reason I'm searching this specifically. Let's see if I can find them. There's a reproduction set. I forget the pattern. I have it in the other room. I could literally go look for it. Pitchers and wash basins are going to be one of those things that most people do wrong because it's the vast majority of the ones we have available to us are like 1880s through 1920s. And so that's what most people are going to use because that's what you're going to come across in antique stores. And that's not what we want. We want something that actually dates probably from the 1820s to the 1840s. There is a set that is reproduction, and they come in 3 colors. They come in blue, pink, and brown. I had the brown version. I'm gonna have to go get it, aren't I? And the reason I like my reproduction, and I would encourage other people to use reproduction if you're gonna take it with you. Now, if it's sitting at a historic site, it's getting used occasionally. I think original is probably okay if you trust the people who are using them. But for like taking places, I would highly suggest a reproduction. That way, it's not that big of a deal if it gets destroyed. Alright, so this is my pitcher and wash basin set. It's smaller, which I like because it's easier to pack. But this is Charlotte by Alfred Meekin, Staffordshire, England. Alright, let me Google that and see if we can find it. There it is, found it. But yeah, it comes in pink, it comes in blue, and also comes in the brown. I picked brown because my dishes are all brown, so I just decided to have everything brown, I suppose. And some people do the blue transferware. I would love to see people do pink. These are kind of expensive now. My goodness. I bought mine for like $30. It's a reproduction. Why are we selling them for this much? You might be able to buy them separately. It's cheaper. So here's the... Okay, yeah. You buy an $18 bowl and find the pitcher. $30 for the pitcher. $25 for the pitcher. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would buy them separate because apparently as a set they're kind of... Yeah, that would be a good set because it's circa 1830, which means it's still relatively within style and use in the 1840s. But yeah, I like these for like bringing places because again, they are not as valuable as an original. And I like bringing my pitchers and wash basins and soap and towels to wash off, particularly after hot events. That's a good way to take a bath. That's how they were taking baths. We like to say, oh, people didn't bathe regularly. They didn't bathe regularly. They washed regularly, usually at least once a day, sometimes a couple of times a day. And so having that pitcher of wash basins, soap, and towels nearby works wonders. It makes you feel nice, fresh, and clean, and you're not like going to bed all sweaty. All right, we're gonna look at some mirrors because a lot of us ladies especially like to have at least a mirror. So here's a couple of nice ones. I have an original somewhere. I think it's in the garage. I'm not gonna go grab it. But it's somewhat, mine's round, but it works somewhat on this principle where you can kind of flip it back and forth depending on the height of the person. Round one. That was a lot more like mine. Mine's just smaller. And of course here's a larger one. So they can get quite big. I wouldn't necessarily think you'd want to bring that to an event, but they do get quite big. Alright, let's talk about candles and lighting. There's a lot of fire with the 19th century. So as far as lanterns go, if you're using lanterns, there are historic sites that will only allow you to use lanterns because the fire is contained within something that at least it won't, if it gets knocked over, it's not going to immediately catch things on fire. It's hard to find lanterns and paintings though. There are some places, let's see, Samson. I know this is appropriate for the 1830s. I don't know if it is for the 1840s, but I'm just gonna show you some of the ones I have. So I use this wood lantern with the door. This is what I bought. I bought 2 of these. And it's a good style, and it works for the 18th century as well, but I have documented these to the 1830s at least. I would need to look for the 1840s, but it may not be unobtrusive if we can't find anything better. But as far as candlesticks go, nice 1840s paintings. So this one, it's hard to see if she has something else in her hand, but you sort of see the candlestick and the large candle, kind of a thick candle there. This one, if you look at genre paintings, candles are usually going to be on the mantle. So like we see one right here, maybe like an iron base, a little bit of a candlestick sticking out there. This one, oh, there's another mirror. Didn't see that one yet. Nice mirror. And very thin candlestick. This one does not have a handle. It's not saying they're inappropriate. I'm just saying haven't seen them yet. So 3, and they don't have to all match. You can have a variety of different candlesticks. So this looks like one. There's a brass one. This one may have a handle in the corner. This one definitely has a handle of some kind right here. They may be pewter, silver, who knows. Here's another one. This one I believe is a Dutch painting. And it has some sort of mound to it to kind of keep it upright a little bit better. Here's another one. Candlestick, that one you see a little bit more of the detail in it. Oh, she has a candle. Oh, she does have a candle. Look at it. Oh, look at this. Again, this is their Germanic one. So I wouldn't necessarily copy it for America, but it has a nice little handle right here. There's something down here. Is that a second, like a little oil lamp thing? Is it like a double? Another, oh, here's one with a handle as well. Little thick base, and the thick base ones are good. Particularly, I like the ones with the handle, but also they have a basin at the bottom and then the candlestick where you put the candle. Because candles drip a lot, and so having a basin there really does help. Otherwise, you will be picking wax off of tables and mantles, which personally, it's actually one of my favorite chores. I love picking wax off of furniture. I will sit there for hours and do it. I love that. But not everybody does. So having one with a basin that catches the wax is nice. Also, when they catch it in the wax, it's easier to take a knife and you can just dig it out and you can make more candles with the drip wax. All right, let's move into cooking and cookware, cooking utensils, all of that. And again, this is just going to be a very basic overview. We're not getting real deep. I'm showing you some sources that we can use. Let's look at some 1830s kitchens. This is a European one. But we see a coffee grinder over here, maybe a bottle, ceramic cup of some kind, pots and pans, looks like kettle of some kind. Okay, this is Dutch. So Dutch and French are going to have a lot more copper in their kitchens. So if you're portraying, even in an area of the US with a lot of French immigrants, or if you have French cooks in the area, you may be more apt to have copper, whereas most other areas in the US are going to have things like cast iron. Also, I really love this oven. I would need an oven like this. This is like genius. You don't have to bend over. It's like so nice. Nice chair in the background too. Yeah, copper. There's another coffee grinder. A little pan right there. There's something up there. It's hard to see. All right. This is Mary Ellen Best. This is going to be either England or France. And so you see all the kitchen implements. This is 1830s, but you see all the dishes. You can see the types and the shapes of the pitchers as far as how big the handles are. You can see bottles and their shapes. Lots and lots of pots and pans. How to, roast rotisserie chicken. It's a nice big kitchen. Those people aren't going to have this, but you see all the kitchen implements. And sometimes you can just, while you're antiquing, match things and go, oh, this is actually the right shape and size to what I need. And you might find something that way. It's another Mary Ellen Best. So not as much stuff. You see the tiles again. Big old copper kettles over here. And some nice stoves. Another one of Mary Ellen Best. I like hers because she has a lot of paintings of kitchens, but they're all European kitchens, so they don't really help me too much. But I think they're pretty, so I like to look at them. A lot more, again, copper. You can see the size and the shape. There's some good bottles over here. Nice size of bottles and pitchers. This is also Mary Ellen Best. This is a more of a lower class laundry area, but this also for kitchen. So there's a basket. You can see a teapot or something, dishes. There's plenty of dishes, both green transferware and blue transferware. That's nice. It's also nice to see that in a single kitchen, not all the plates and such match. Now, places like Samson Historical will have stuff for like 18th century cooking. I'm not saying they're appropriate for everything. You'd have to document wooden bowls. They are very old-fashioned by this time period. We like to use them because they look primitive. If you're doing a lower class impression, we think, oh, it looks really nice. But at this point, transferware has been out for a while. So it's not, even poorer people can have china and nicer things. It doesn't have to be wooden bowls. And there aren't a lot of references to wooden bowls being used. Even in poor working class societies. So really document that sort of thing. What's common in the 18th century may not be common in the 1840s. So just because it looks nice and primitive does not make it appropriate. Wooden mixing spoon will probably work for you. Let's see, what else I saved. There we go. Drinking vessels. I would have to research. You'd have to research all of this. I'm not sure how that's appropriate. Anything that's like crystal or something that's going to be like an heirloom that's passed on, you could probably get away with a little bit more than something like a horn cup if that's truly an 18th century thing. Some mugs might be appropriate. You could probably document the stoneware tankards. You just, again, have to document it. Size, shape of the handle, how thick the base is versus the top. All of that goes into what makes something appropriate or not. And you have to remember, things like stoneware and glassware break. Saying that I have this set of 1760s, almost 100 years old at this point, stuff, and it just happens to not have broken all that time, things break. You have to replace them and get the newest model. That's how it works. It would be very uncommon to have a whole kitchen set of 18th century things. Unfortunately, most of what we have available to us are the 18th century people who do their research and have nice kitchen stuff, and so we don't get 1840s is one of those time periods where not a lot of people do it. It's like the 1830s. So all the vendors either go for 18th century or Civil War. And it's like, well, there are time periods where the 18th century stuff is way too old and wouldn't have lasted in a lot of cases. It wouldn't be used regularly. And then the 1860 stuff hasn't been invented yet. So it's like, what are we supposed to use? But cast iron doesn't change very much. Cast iron you can probably use. Again, I would document it, but you can probably use it. Yeah, the kettle, you see these kettles even into the 1860s. So I would look at the sizes and shapes and all that and document them into the 1830s and 1840s, but I would say that's probably appropriate, but also I don't know cookingware, so I'd have to look at it a little bit more closely. Pottery, again, they may be appropriate, they may be out of style and not being made anymore. It's another thing, it's going to depend on the time wear. It's going to depend on the time. If you are doing Texas or like the southwestern, what's it called? Mocha-ware. Is it transfer? It's just mocha-ware. Yes, SJ Pottery. They are on Etsy, although right now, as I'm filming this, the shop is taking a short break. It may be up by the time this video uploads. I will put the link below. But mocha-ware and transferware is found in the 1820s through the 1850s, I believe, in Texas. Maybe later. Maybe it goes into the 1860s. And there are other areas that you do see mocha ware as well. And they make reproductions, really nice reproductions. So I have, I need to get some bowls, but I have several cups. I have a couple of the cups without the handle, and I have a couple ones with the handle. So I have specifically, Rhett has this one. I have this one, although there's a chip out of it now. And then I bought that. It's one of these two. Pretty sure it's the blue one. And I have another one of these, but I don't remember. I think we each have a handled cup and a non-handled cup. And I would love to get more. They're a little bit expensive. They can be a little bit more on the expensive side, but it lasts you a long time and it's really good stuff. And they have different, they have mocha-ware, and they will have other things such as redware and salt glaze stoneware. If you can find references to it in your area, this would be a really good resource. I like their stuff, so just a little plug for them. So I will link their website because I know it works, and they do have a link to their Etsy store on the website. It's just, it was taking a break when I checked. Yeah, it's taking a break. Oh, because they're at an event. So it'll probably be back by the time this video uploads. That would be a good place. Again, if you're in the Texas-ish area, or if you have references to mocha-ware, that would be a good place. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and do like dining stuff. So like table settings. a lot of this stuff is not going to be appropriate. It's going to be far too early, especially like the wooden stuff. What I would suggest, what I have, there's this place on Etsy. So they're, and they make reproduction pewter spoons. And so this one is an 18th to 19th century fiddle and thread fridge spoons. So they're just 18th century stuff would probably be a little bit out of date, but you know, that could be a good reference. I'm really bad with like dating silverware and stuff. Let's see, I found earlier, where'd it go? There's a book that I'm thinking about getting called British Cutlery, because I want to be able to date this stuff better. And so I'm thinking that probably would be a good resource for me. It's kind of an expensive book though. And as far as dishes go and all of that, Spode Italian is 1816, I believe. And it's one of those, okay, the thing about dishes, I've already explained why I don't like to bring originals out to the field. With cooking and eating ware specifically, the reason I don't like to use originals is because sometimes there are heavy metals such as lead, not necessarily in the glaze. Sometimes it's like made in the pottery itself, and as long as the glaze is intact, it's usually safe. The problem is if there are cracks, and sometimes things like hot liquids and stuff can leach the lead and such into what you're consuming, which would make it not safe. So what I would suggest doing is finding a pattern that was available back then, because Spode particularly, I'm a fan of Spode. That's why I'm talking about Spode. There are other earthenware china dealers and brands. I particularly like Spode because my dishes are all Spode. But Spode in particular takes some of their heritage patterns and they will reprint them every once in a while. So Italian is one of those things where it was first debuted in the 1816, and then every couple of decades it would come back and be a very popular thing. And so you can get modern, safe dishes. I don't mind that there are modern things on the back of my dishes because they're never seen. Some people, that is a really big deal for them, and I understand that because that is an authenticity issue. But again, I feel like as a living historian, we need to do what was available and safe. And I don't necessarily think eating off of originals is safe. Not to mention the historical preservation aspect of if you break or drop an original, that original is gone forever. Whereas if it's a reproduction, it's safer. And I would rather see a modern label underneath if it's going to be on the table and no one's going to see it anyway. I'd much rather have this than either break an original or get lead poisoning. So that's a safety issue for me. Someone else may disagree. They may decide that is safe for them, and that's not up to me. That's up to them. But yeah, you can buy that. I think I'm pretty sure that Sampson Historical sells the Italian, which is weird because it's 1860. I guess you don't have to just stick with the 18th century, I suppose. Yeah, they have a tire dinner set. It's kind of expensive, but it's there. Replacements, you can like search anything. So if I search Spode Italian, here they all are. And you can do dinner plate or a dinner plate set of 4, a luncheon plate, salad plate, go away. All the ads. And they have them in different colors, so it's not just the blue. Most people like the blue, and blue was popular back then. I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't. But there are other colors of transferware. I specifically dated at least to the 1830s. I have seen blue transferware, pink transferware, and this is in order of being common. So blue, pink, green, brown, and purple have been all colors I've seen. I'm pretty sure I've seen red once too, but don't quote me on that one. But yeah, lots of different colors, and you can buy them all. I feel like there's a pitcher and bowl set. I don't know if that's appropriate to the 1830s, because again, the styles, just because it is Spode Italian and it's 1860, don't assume that every style is appropriate. Things, again, will go ebb and flow. The sizes of the plates will change. So just make sure you're going back to the originals first, document the dimensions and all of that, and then go find the modern replacements. So that would be a good one. That one's obviously not the Spode Italian, but this one looks like it comes in blue and pink would be the appropriate colors. I have Spode Delamere. That's what I have. Yes, this is Delamere. So this is my pattern. The originals, I believe, had something in the middle as well, but this particular design on the outside does date to the 1820s, and it comes in blue, brown, I think it comes in, I know it comes in pink. So like this would not be this would be a modern mug. This would not be appropriate. But yeah, that's my dishes. since we're talking about dishes, I'll come back to the reproduction ones in it. So like dishes, yeah, there's some on here. Teapot styles will change significantly. So it's very hard to date them, but you need to go back to the originals and get the right shape because not all shapes are appropriate to the 1840s. It's a nice little picture right here that she's carrying. She has like a pot on the ground in the house as well. This lady has a nice little picture. I actually found an exact reproduction of this picture at Hobby Lobby one year, so I bought it, and that's like my good 1830s and 1840s picture now. Little glass, plain glassware is usually pretty acceptable. This is a great one for dishes, all sorts of kinds, and you see all the bottles. And again, like basic glassware, that was almost like a whiskey glass right there. And a lot of the stuff is going to be appropriate, even if you just put water in it. Like, that's an appropriate glass style. You can kind of see some of the cutlery. Still lifes are being great for dating plates and cutlery and that sort of thing. And you can get good pictures of still lifes that include all that if you look for them. So that'd be a good way to start dating some things. This lady, yeah, copper or something pot. This lady, there's a kettle right here. Yeah, there's some kitchen implements. You might have to find a clearer picture of that. Let's go. So Delamere would be good. Spode Italian would be good. Blue willow. Everyone does blue willow, which there is other colors. There is pink willow as well. No one ever uses that. I would love to see more colors at events other than just blue transferware. Everyone does the blue transferware. Be different. Do something fun to show the variety in the mid-19th century. That's one of the reasons I have brown. Blue is my favorite color, but I specifically chose brown because it was fairly common in the 19th century and no one does brown because everyone thinks it's boring. So I specifically chose brown transferware to show different colors. And so people didn't think that the only pattern available was blue willow. But it is very easy to find blue willow because it is everywhere. It's a very popular pattern. It has been in print or in production for a long time. I think it dates to the 1780s if I remember correctly. It would be very nice to start seeing some different patterns and designs, because there are people who you go to an event and all you see is blue willow, and blue willow is pretty and I understand it, but there is more than just blue and pink. It'd be great to see some green transferware. Really wish I had done green, but my Delamere pattern doesn't come in green, so maybe eventually I'll get another set of dishes and it'll be the green transferware because I like the green transferware. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh yeah, there is a good book, Spode Printed Transferware from 1874 to 1830s. That'd be nice to be able to see the patterns, and then you can Google the patterns and see if you can find modern reproductions. That would be a really nice Spode Italian. There's blue willow, SJ pottery. Yeah, Spode Italian. All right, let's go through the rest of the pictures real quick before we end, because there were a couple other things. Baskets. Baskets are one of those things that people like to have to carry around things. People like to use them as purses. Please use a pocket as opposed to a basket. But there are baskets that are appropriate for things such as holding mending or holding your sewing, carrying things to market, that sort of thing. But really they shouldn't be used as a purse necessarily. Yeah, there's one good size. And again, basket styles are one of those things. The sizes, shapes of baskets do change based on the time period. So just because you find a basket does not make it appropriate to the 1840s. There's a couple of baskets here. So this one looks like it was holding wine bottles. It's like when you go to restaurants and you buy or like fast food places and you get a lot of drinks and they give you the drink carrier. It's basically that, but in basket form. And there's another larger basket as well. Oh yeah, this one had a little tiny basket over in the corner to hold her sewing implements. This one was market baskets. Another market basket. This one had a basket on the ground holding clothes, it looks like. Oh yeah, I picked a few miscellaneous pieces. Grandfather clock in the background. Like, it's just, those are usually pretty easy to date. The old ones will, are usually dated. This one. Have I ever noticed the child swinging in the trees? Interesting. Wheelbarrow. That's kind of nice. Some farm implements over here. You see the weirdest thing is in paintings. It's really nice. This one, I specifically, things, bandbox. Looks like a little bird cage. Books. Nice picture in the background. She has a spinning wheel right here with the cup right here. clock on the wall. Looks like that might hold water. And of course the table, and we've already talked about like the pitcher and the water and that sort of thing. And just random things. So like if you're a painter, you can go look up paintings of painters and you can see what their easels looked like, how they stored their brushes, what their paints looked like. All of that you can find images of. So it's just to show there's so much stuff you can look at and see, and even how you're decorating your space. Like there's a kettle over here in here, and there's a hearth brush, and all the little knickknacks and teacups that you see. When you see people sit it down, it's a good place to like study the types of china and the shapes on whether the whether teacups have handles or not, because there are time periods where they don't have handles. How deep or shallow the saucers are. All of that plays into time period as well. So in conclusion, always go back to the primary sources. Vaguely old-timey things are not okay unless, of course, you document them. Reproductions, in my personal opinion, are fine, actually preferable to using originals when out in the field, but they should look like and be made like the originals as close as possible. Remember that living history is about teaching history, not make-believe or fantasy, no matter how good the intentions are. Just because it looks old-timey or looks, oh yeah, that's close, they had this material back then, does not make it appropriate to your time and place. Always go back to the primary sources to make sure that you are teaching real history for your time and place. And review even the tiniest details. Things such as screws, or how things such as nails, or how wood is joined together, or the types of materials used, or the types of weaves used, do make a very big difference whether you are teaching history or fantasy. And remember, a lot of things you can do without. I only just started getting my kitchenware about 2 or 3 years ago. For the longest time, I only had one plate and one spoon and one knife, one fork and one bowl and one cup. And I brought that to every event because that's all I had. And it took me time to gather all of that. And that's okay. If you don't have the stuff, you can always ask people that you're going to be attending with, does anyone have an extra? People who've been doing living history for a while generally have extras. Sometimes we have a lot of things. I have a whole 12-person set of dinnerware and spoons and forks now for the early to mid 19th century. Like I can host a dinner party for 12 and have enough stuff. After a few years, you'll start collecting things. If somebody decides I have my 1 or 2 piece set of dishes, I've saved up, I'm going to buy this really nice set that's what I really want, but this is still appropriate for the time period. They may sell that to you cheaper. That's why you make friends in the hobby, because usually they go to their friends first when they're selling stuff. Personally, I'm one of those people, I don't buy camping or household items for my living history stuff unless they're very highly discounted. And you do have to wait. I didn't own a tent until I got married. And just right before we got married, it just so happened that a lady was selling her tent. It's like a $2,000-$3,000 tent. It's a huge wall tent, came with a fly, came with all the wood pieces, some pieces you can't even get anymore. And she was selling it all for $200. So I snapped that up really fast, and we picked it up on the way back from our honeymoon because she lived in Mississippi. I just didn't have a tent. What did I do? I either went to events where I was going to be inside, so like they had sleeping quarters available, or I slept under the stars. I've done that more than once. I didn't really care. A couple times I've done that. It was always fine. If it starts raining or something, there's usually someone who's really nice who will let you sleep under their fly or something. But yeah, it's just part of living history. I don't mind it. There are people who mind it, and maybe you will want to save up for that a little bit more, or just attend events where you don't have to camp. You go specifically to events with houses that you have somewhere to sleep. And I know other people who go to just camping events, but instead of staying on site, they go to a motel for the night and they just come out during the day of the event. And usually that's fine too. Again, as the event coordinators, usually they'll have some sort of accommodation for you or figure out what you can do where all parties involved had their needs met. Again, things like my dishes. My dishes that I use every single day are an 1820s pattern. They're all modern dishes, but they're an 1820s pattern that I can use I use them for 1820s all the way up to 1860s. In fact, a lot of the pieces I got for my wedding because that was my wedding china. I just chose to have a historic pattern for my wedding china because I'm a weird history person. Most of the friends I know thrift their dishes. They get like $2 plates or $5 bowls because they've studied enough to where they know what they're looking for. They know the patterns they're looking for. And they just go find stuff at thrift stores. My advice is just to borrow until you can find a really good deal. Again, most living historians I know are very happy to loan out items, particularly to people who return their items promptly and in good condition. And remember, as living historians, we do what they did back then as long as it's available and safe. If we cannot do the most popular thing, we look for a safe and available alternative that may be less common in that particular time period. And if we can't find that, then we find the closest thing to period passable that we possibly can that is both available and safe. Or we do without, which would be the preferable option. So that's about it for today. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.